Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's episode of the Jayden Bryce Show, the show where we talk about the hottest topics in the world of sports. It is Tuesday, December 16th. We are approximately almost 9 days away from the Christmas holiday. As I said, it is Tuesday. You're probably saying, why are you going live on Tuesday? I said yesterday I'm going out of town on vacation to celebrate my college graduation for the rest of the week, so I'm not going to be available for the continuation of the week. Wednesday, Friday, not going to be here. So we're going to do a show today. We're going to knock out 6 huge topics. I'm going to talk about last night's action between the Steelers and the Dolphins. Then we're going to talk about Joe Burrow and his controversial statement. We're going to talk about the Eagles possibly getting their mojo back against the Raiders. I'll give my interpretation of that. Talk a little bit of Seahawks as I predicted yesterday, because they had got a lot of issues going on that I'm not really a fan of so far. The Prince who was promised, Trevor Lawrence, he's playing well. We're going to talk some Jaguars, and then we're going to end some things off with the Cowboys and some statements that Jerry Jones just made as of this morning on 105.3 The Fan regarding the Dallas Cowboys and their future with Matt Eberflus as the defensive coordinator. That's what we have lined up today. I'm excited. I hope you are as well. Before we get to the show, do not hesitate to like my podcast, subscribe, share it to your friends and your family, and let's continue to build this community up. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into a topic that I could care less to talk about that much, but I'm just giving my interpretation of what happened during the game. Dolphins Steelers last night. You know, you have two teams who are very, very mediocre. You have one in the Steelers who are pretty much in the playoff mix just because of how abysmal the AFC North is. And then you have another team in the Dolphins who were kind of hot these last couple of weeks, but, you know, it's the Dolphins. They're in the cold weather. You're going to Pittsburgh. Tua Tagovailoa is your quarterback. You know, you're not expecting much success when you think about the Dolphins. So my main takeaway from their game last night, from the Steelers' point of view, they look good against the Dolphins. Sure, why not? But they still are boring on offense, and they look like a poorly constructed roster. Again, look old on defense. Yes, they had success against Tua Tagovailoa, but they look old defensively. Offensively, they have no verticality to their offense. Outside of the 2 touchdown passes, one to Aaron Rodgers' man, MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and then the big play that DK Metcalf made, which it's kind of nice to see DK Metcalf finally catching a pass. You know, he's been out here just running slants and all this good. Nice to finally give DK Metcalf the ball 15 yards down the field. Thank you, Arthur Smith. Saw that, and he shoved Minkah Fitzpatrick over to the side. Great stuff. So outside of those 2 passes, we have not been able to see much efficiency, verticality to the offense of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I got to give kudos and credit to where credit is due. They ran the ball yesterday well with Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell. That duo seems to be pretty productive over the last couple of weeks, and they were very productive last night. Aaron Rodgers, got to give him some credit as well. He is still flinging the football very well. Like, throws a nice spiral. He's on time. And it really makes me think when I watched Rodgers last night, if he played for a team like the Vikings, I think the Vikings could be in the playoff push. But he has the Pittsburgh Steelers playing well. I saw a stat earlier this morning. The Pittsburgh Steelers are top 3 in red zone efficiency. We got to give credit where credit is due. Aaron Rodgers, at his current age, being able to have the Steelers in the position that he has them, got to give him credit. They're 8-6. They are currently in the mix for their playoff push. And that has to do with the play of Aaron Rodgers and the offense. And they played physical on both sides of the ball. The offensive line was physical in the run game. But whoever ultimately comes out of the AFC North feels like they're going to be one and done. Because both the Steelers and the Ravens, both of these teams, have major flaws that you would be surprised if either one of these teams win one playoff game. And if they do, and they get to the second round, they're going to get boat raced by whoever they play. Again, the Steelers have no verticality. Even last night, you're watching them. All these dinking dunk throws, the swing passes to the running back, the play action dump downs to the tight ends. Again, outside the couple of throws that he threw touchdown passes for, just no sort of verticality to the offense. And when you go to the playoffs, you're playing good on good. So you're going to play pretty elite defenses. That's not going to fly. You think the Steelers offense is going to be able to be that efficient against a defense such as the Houston Texans, the Jacksonville Jaguars? It's not going to happen. And when we revert to the Ravens, they just haven't played well. Lamar's not playing good. This game they just had on Sunday was an anomaly just because of how atrocious Joe Burrow and the Bengals are, which we are about to talk about them next. But we're not trusting Lamar and the Ravens to play well enough to win multiple playoff games this year. They're just bad teams. And when we swing over to the Dolphins' points of view, the Dolphins have some decisions to make. Tua Tagovailoa is not a good quarterback. There's nothing, and this is just my personal opinion. I know this is kind of like the overarching theme and statement across the league, but there's no way you can convince me that Tua Tagovailoa is a quarterback capable of building a franchise around. He's just not that guy. He's not great. He's a good quarterback. He's just not good enough, and he's not worth building a franchise around. Mainly because he's just too injury prone. And he's not a good football player at the quarterback position. When you stack him up, even in his own division, Drake May and Josh Allen, you would rather have Drake May and Josh Allen than Tua Tagovailoa. Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, all these, Justin Herbert, in your same draft class, all of these guys are better than Tua. So what do the Dolphins do? I looked it up earlier. If they cut him pre-June 1st, they have $99 million in dead cap space. And even if he is a post-June 1st cut, it's going to spread that money around to the next couple of seasons, but that's still just a lot of dead cap space over the next couple of years. What are you going to do with Mike McDaniels? Are you going to keep him? But they're better off keeping Tua Tagovailoa because they have no options at quarterback. When you look out at a draft, as of right now, we haven't heard what Dante Moore is going to do because we're not going to hear what he's going to do until post-college football playoff. But we know for certain, as of right now, Fernando Mendoza is the only good quarterback coming out of this draft. And if you were the Dolphins, you're not even primarily set up to draft him because you're 6-8. You're roughly in the lower teens, the 10, 11, 12-ish draft pick. And we know Fernando Mendoza is going to be a top 5 draft pick. So if you do want Mendoza, you're going to have to give up draft capital to jump into the top 5, even top 3 to draft a quarterback. So you're better off just sticking to Tua Tagovailoa for another year. Then you'll be able to cut him going into his last couple years of his contract because of the guarantees aren't as daunting as they are going into next season. And as far as Mike McDaniel, a lot of people were having these conversations around the league the last couple of weeks about ever since they fired their GM, like they found revitalized life. That was kind of like the overarching conversation going into their matchup yesterday on Monday Night Countdown. They interviewed Devon Achane and they were like, yeah, we got this different energy. Mike McDaniel's keeping us together. And then last night, Monday Night Football, primetime TV, in the cold, they sucked. Their defense stayed on the field. And Mike McDaniel didn't really plead his case for the reason why the Dolphins should keep him. But there's been these conversations around the league that people really think around the NFL landscape that if Mike McDaniel is to get another head coaching job, he is going to excel. I don't know where they're getting that from, but I'm just telling you that is what they are saying around the league as of today. But the future of the Dolphins is not bright. They have New England to worry about. they thought, the Patriots were going to be on this little stint without Tom Brady. Oh, they're going to struggle. Well, guess what? Mike Vrabel, Drake May, the Patriots are back. Josh Allen is not going anywhere for the foreseeable future. And you didn't and weren't able to take advantage of the 2022 and 2023 seasons. In 2022, you made the playoffs, you lost to the Bills, and you lost in the playoffs without Tua Tagovailoa because guess what? He was injured. And then in 2023, you got boat raced in the playoffs on the road in Kansas City. Your Super Bowl window is closed. Has been closed for a good while now. And they're just not in a good spot. If I'm a Dolphins fan, you thought you kind of had your window here with only having to worry about Josh Allen, but now you're having to worry about New England for the foreseeable future now again. Just not good days going on in Miami. And as far as the Steelers, they're an okay football team. They're not making no noise in the playoffs. Let's just be 100% totally honest with ourselves. Philadelphia, the Dirty Birds. Now, I told you all, this team here, they are like the gift that keeps on giving, Philadelphia media, if you haven't been paying attention to Philadelphia media the last week or so, ever since they lost on Monday Night Football last week, they've had these conversations about starting Tanner McKee in favor of Jalen Hurts. And I made a comment in a post on Twitter. I'm like, these Eagle fans will make the most asinine comments I've heard in my life. Like, you would rather have your previous Super Bowl MVP. You'd rather sit him in favor of Tanner McKee. A guy who, I don't even know, where did he even go to college? Like, I've never heard of the guy. Like, all these WIP in Philly, all these radio shows, they're just clamoring about this guy being, he's got great fundamentals, great throw to football. Like, dude, you have a Super Bowl MVP playing this year. And lo and behold, on Sunday, the Philadelphia Eagles were finally able to have some success on offense. I wonder why. It's kind of crazy how good and efficient the Eagles offense looks when Hurts throws less than 20 times while running run-pass option. Kind of shocking, right? The idea that Jalen Hurts is this drop-back quarterback, I don't know where the Eagles are getting this from. I don't know if Jalen Hurts is part of this problem or if this is a Kevin Patullo type problem when it comes to the play calling. They're like trying to prove this statement or prove the doubters wrong that Jalen Hurts isn't the prototypical in the pocket type quarterback. But I'm sorry, Jalen Hurts, and your ego. I know your ego is way up here, but you got to come to the realization that you are not a prototypical pocket quarterback. Your best asset has and always will be your efficiency with your legs and your ability for your team to run pass option. I went back to their Super Bowl stats last year. Jalen Hurts threw the ball 22 times. They ran run pass option. A.J. Brown caught 2 passes. Devontae Smith caught 3 passes. And they ran the ball with Saquon Barkley. Played good defense, efficient defense, and they got a win. And that is what the Eagles did on Sunday against the Raiders. Now, obviously, the Raiders are super pathetic. They had 75 total yards of offense, 29 net passing yards, and they are probably the worst team in the league. They run back Pete Carroll. That has turned out to be a disaster decision. People were questioning Pete Carroll having his fastball and not having his fastball the last couple years when he was in Seattle. And, this year he took a break from coaching last year and they hired him in the offseason and got rid of Antonio Pierce, and they've looked significantly worse. They have 2 good players, Brock Bowers and Max Crosby. They've had conversations, and one can argue that either one of these guys could get traded in the future. More so Max Crosby than Brock Bowers. But one of these guys are possibly on the move because they're just terrible. So when you put that into the conversation with Philadelphia's success that they had on Sunday, there's not much you can take away from it because defensively they are just atrocious. This football team as a whole are pathetic. But I got to give credit to where credit is due. The Eagles sort of found their identity. They really did. Their identity is run pass option, running the football, and that is their recipe for success. That is the type of play calling that is efficient for Jalen Hurts. That is the type of play calling that allowed Jalen Hurts to be the Super Bowl champion and the Super Bowl MVP. I don't want to see a game for the rest of the season where Jalen Hurts drops back and throws the ball 40 times. And on the contrary, in the Eagles' first Super Bowl matchup, which do not get me wrong, Jalen Hurts played exceptionally well. And it took a phantom holding call against the Eagles on Juju Smith-Schuster that kind of gave the Chiefs that Super Bowl. But in that first game that they lost in the Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts did throw the ball almost 40 times and they lost. Go look at the stats. When Jalen Hurts throws less, around 20-ish passes, less than that, they win football games. And when you watch that game on Sunday, like Jalen Hurts was making plays with his legs. They had designed quarterback runs. It was just efficient football. Now, let's not get it twisted. When we look across the current NFC landscape, I think they're the 5th best team in the NFC. As of right now, I have the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Bears ahead of them in the NFC. And the Packers, with a slight asterisk, because of the injury to Micah Parsons. I got to wait and see if I can fully buy into the idea that the Packers can win the Super Bowl. Kind of leaning towards the idea that they're not, but I want to still hold out hope for that idea. So that is where I have the Eagles stacking up against the other teams in the NFC. But the game against Buffalo will really, really tell me how legit this team is. They're going to go on the road. Now, already, they're going to have one playoff game. They're currently 3rd in the NFC. So at the most, unless the Bears just completely fall off their rocker and the Rams, well, not the Bears, because the Rams automatically will get a first-round bye. So unless, somebody falls off the rocker and doesn't get the 2 seed, Philly's only going to get one playoff game at home. So on the road, you're going to Buffalo. It's going to be extremely cold, I imagine. Might have some snow. You're going up against Josh Allen, a desperate Bills team. And if they win that game and win it pretty convincingly, play well on offense, which, again, Buffalo's defense is not the best. Kind of in the not as bad as the Raiders, but Buffalo's probably got a less than middle of the pack type defense. So there's 32 teams in the NFL. I would imagine as a team, Buffalo's defense probably stacks in the 18, 19, 20 range. Like they're that bad. They're not very good. So if they go on the road and win that game pretty convincingly, it'll probably show me how legit this team is. But so far, I'm not going to completely buy into that performance they put up against the Raiders. They've lost 3 games. Their past 3 games, 2 against playoff teams, 1 against a division rival where they were up 21-0 at halftime, gave that up. And then you're going to go up against a potential AFC East contender in Buffalo on the road at Highmark Stadium. So if they go on the road and win that game, they will convince me. But if they go on the road and struggle, I don't know how people can expect Philadelphia to make a deep playoff run. But we got to give credit to where credit is due. I feel like the Eagles found their offensive identity on Sunday. If Kevin Patullo and Nick Sirianni, now that they are saying that Nick Sirianni is part of the offensive game plan now, if Nick Sirianni in any way, form, or fashion deviates away from what they did on Sunday, it's just coaching malpractice. It really is, because this team is Super Bowl ready. This is a Super Bowl roster. Like, this offense, that's a lot of money contributed. They have a Hall of Fame wide receiver in A.J. Brown, potentially. A great borderline number one wide receiver in Devontae Smith. A Hall of Fame running back. And you have a quarterback who, he's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame one day. He's kind of not Hall of Fame type talent quarterback, but he's probably going to make the Hall of Fame just because his statistics, his winning record, and his accolades. That is the roster you have. Don't even get started about your 2 Hall of Fame tackles and a pretty good tight end. And the defense has been your strong suit. They are set. And they're going to get Jalen Carter back. So this team is Super Bowl ready. And they found their identity. It's just a matter of fact, if Kevin Patullo and everyone just continues to lean into this type of identity. I kind of teased it earlier when we were talking about the Steelers. Joe Burrow has been the talk of the NFL for the last couple weeks. And I wanted to talked about their performance last week, and I was really hitting on the fact of how good Joe Burrow really is. Like, that performance he put on against the Bills was exceptional. And last week, at some point leading up to the game against the Ravens, he had this presser where he made comments about him not enjoying the game of football. He's just not been enjoying it. And the topic of this was Joe Burrow not having fun in Cincinnati. And that is a typo on my graphic. Please excuse that. That's supposed to say unhappy. But I really put into perspective, and I thought about this from a grand scheme of things. And I came up with this argument and this take. Are we aware that Joe Burrow has not played a significant football game in 3 years? Let that sink in. Joe Burrow, Heisman winner, been to the Super Bowl in his second year in the NFL, particularly really his rookie season, has not played a meaningful football game in 3 years. Let's go over to history. 2023, had a wrist injury. He was 5-5 at the time. Team was not good enough to make the playoffs. 2024, last year, MVP type level season. Statistically, he was off the charts, but he did not have a defense good enough to get them into the playoff mix. And this year, he missed majority of the season with the turf toe. And I really, really, really do think if Joe Burrow was on this roster all year, I really do think that they would have been in the conversation to make the playoffs. Heck, just a couple of weeks ago they were. If the Bengals would have won last week against Buffalo and would have won Sunday against the Ravens, like, they have they're still in the mix for getting into the playoffs. But again, Joe Burrow has not played a significant football game in 3 years. He's won a Heisman, he's a national champion, and he went to the Super Bowl in his second year as a quarterback. Even before he went to Louisiana State University. He went to Ohio State, one of the premier programs in college football history. In the NIL era, and heck, even back when before NIL era, they had C.J. Stroud, Justin Fields, like they were going to the national championship. And right now, they're national champions last year, and this year are like could be considered the favorites so far to win the college football playoff this year. Like, that's the type of programs that Joe Burrow has been a part of. And when he came to Cincinnati, he tore his ACL his first year, and the next year after that, you draft Jamar Chase and you go to the Super Bowl. And then the year after that, you go to the playoffs, you go on the road, and you beat Josh Allen at Highmark Stadium in the snow. You go from that. Like, Joe Burrow was drafted in 2020. So you're talking about for the last, you've got 22, 21, 20, 19, I guess maybe 18, you can say. Like, he was part of winning for 5-6 straight years. competing. This is what Joe Burrow is. He is the ultimate competitor. He made a quote when he was coming off injury in Thanksgiving, and I guess the reporter or whatever she asked was asking Joe Burrow, and she was like, hey, Joe, like, why do you feel like coming back so early? Because Joe Burrow really came back earlier than the timeline really predicted him, and he was like, I'm the ultimate competitor. Like, people pay to watch me play. Like, we get paid to play. I'm going to play football. Like, Joe Burrow is the ultimate competitor. So you can imagine playing meaningless football. Oh, and let's not take his comments out of context, which I know people, the trade rumors and all that, have been a focal point around this conversation. But let's be honest, you are a football player. It is not fun to be playing meaningless football. If you're a guy like Joe Burrow and you love the game of football and you're a super competitive guy, of course, we've had some players and they've admitted over years, like, dude, I'm getting paid $1 million. Like, I'm bringing home a $500,000 game check. Like, I'm good. Like, I don't care if I win. I'm chilling. There's been a multitude of guys who's openly admitted that type of conversation over the years in the NFL. But a guy like Joe Burrow, no matter the game check, this guy wants to win games. Like, he wants to be the greatest in the league. We've had conversations over the last couple of years, and, you know, they've dissed it away just because of his health. Like, Joe Burrow was a top 2 quarterback in the league. Outside of Patrick Mahomes, people were having Joe Burrow in the conversation of, yeah, this guy can be the best quarterback in the NFL. He kind of almost went back-to-back seasons of making it to the Super Bowl. He lost in the AFC Championship game to the Kansas City Chiefs. That is what we're talking about with Joe Burrow. So it's not fun to play a game knowing you don't have a legit chance of competing for a championship. And that's been the case for Joe Burrow the last 3 years. The Bengals have invested a lot in Joe Burrow. This is the reason why I don't really agree that the Bengals or even Joe Burrow is kind of hinting around want to get away from this marriage. They've built an indoor practice facility whenever they drafted him because of there was conversations around this about Joe Burrow kind of getting an ownership like, dude, we're the only team in the NFL who does not have an indoor practice facility. How is this the case? There wasn't a quote that directly tied Joe Burrow saying that, but I remember a couple years ago, there was just articles just really insinuating that, yeah, they built one just because they got Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Like, they got these premier players, and you're going to want to take care of these players because, you know, they do the NFLPA does these rankings every year, which I think they're getting rid of it this season. But, you know, they did the report cards to where the players rank like each organization, and like the Bengals were bottom everywhere, in every way, form, or fashion. So they built an indoor practice facility when it regards to having the presence of Joe Burrow. They drafted Jamar Chase when they really wanted to draft Penei Sewell. And they signed T. Higgins this past offseason when I kind of feel like the Bengals were leaning towards letting him walk. But in order for the Bengals to be successful these next couple of years, they got to draft. And I went back. They have not drafted well these last couple of years. They have not. And I went back 5 years. The Shamar Stewart trade has been The Shamar Stewart pick has been an absolute disaster. You know, you had the whole drama with him in the offseason leading up into the preseason of him not signing his rookie contract. Had all that going on. Now he's been injured part of this year, and when he has played, he's not been good. Outside of him, the only really good player has been Chase Brown. He's a running back. Like, you haven't drafted an in-back player since Jamar Chase. Now, the Knight kid, Demetrius Knight at linebacker, he's a pretty good player. He's flashed here or there so far this season. But they just don't have talent. That Super Bowl team they took, even defensively, they weren't really loaded with talent. They just had Lou Anarumo was the architect of that defense. And you got rid of him. He was kind of like the scapegoat for their defensive struggles. But he's been very, very successful in Indianapolis. Look at what he's doing over there with the Colts in that defense. He's been out with two of their best corners, Shardavius Ward and Sauce Gardner, were not on the field on Sunday. And yet, one of the best prolific offenses in the NFL, they got a guy in Jackson Smith and Jigba, who is the leading receiver in the NFL. Sam Darnold's playing well. Like, they held that offensive unit on Sunday on the road to nothing but field goals. So again, it's the thing with the Bengals. They have coaching malpractice across the board and organizational malpractice across the board. Zach Taylor had conversations and questions with him getting the job done, starting with the slow starts into earlier on in the season. Like, there's so many question marks where it's going to be hard. And you sign Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, if you're Joe Burrow, you signed that contract. You got that money. You got that extension. Jamar Chase, you paid those guys. T. Higgins, you paid him. You're struggling right now to pay a star defensive end in Trey Henderson. You're struggling to pay him. So if you're Joe Burrow, I don't really know how your situation gets any better. And that's probably where you're going to introduce the trade rumors. But man, it's going to be hard for Joe Burrow to win in Cincy. I really think as long as he's the quarterback in Cincinnati, they're going to be a fun watch. And I know people are entertained. Like, imagine if Joe Burrow goes to the Rams. Do you know how good that football team is going to be? Like, Joe Burrow's been injured because he's been getting killed by his offensive line since his first year. Heck, he tore his ACL because of the offensive line. Imagine if Joe Burrow was able to get an efficient offensive line with that kind of talent that the Rams have, both sides of the ball. Please, Joe Burrow be an MVP. Like, Matt Stafford is in the MVP race. Imagine if Joe Burrow was in LA. I digress. The guy's great. That's just my thing with Joe Burrow. And we can't really take the comments of Joe Burrow not having fun fully out of context. This team. Now, I've been on this horse. I love this guy. Y'all know I have a fascination with this guy. The Prince who was promised. I know Nick Wright has this trademark. You know, he really should trademark this because I use it way too much. But the Prince who was promised, Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars. Like, I've been wanting to talk about a couple of teams, like outside of like the who's teams I discuss every week, like Dallas, Philly, the Bills, Chiefs. Like, I talk about the major teams, but what about those underlying teams like the Colts and like all the smaller teams that aren't like the big market teams? So you got a little place down there in Jacksonville. You know, you got the really rich owner, got a pool in the stadium. Like, they've really slid under the radar. Like, we thought this team was left for dead whenever they choked that game to the Texans on the road. Like, I really don't know how that happened. But when you look at it over the last 5 weeks, you're really sitting there like, I mean, the Texans are actually pretty good. Not a really bad loss. And the Jaguars have won 5 games in a row. The Jaguars have won 5 games in a row. I watch the NFL weekly, and I did not even know this stat was even true. I had to look at it a couple times. I was sitting there like, the Jaguars have won 5 straight games? How? When? Where? Ever since they played that terrible game against the Texans, they've been rolling. Absolutely rolling. They are currently number 1 in their division, and it kind of feels like the division is in their hands, and they're going to host a home playoff game. Just phenomenal stuff going on in Jacksonville. Liam Cohen has Trevor Lawrence playing well. I haven't been able to watch the tape. I don't have the All-22 app. I kind of wish I had it. I might invest into it next season to kind of deeper and analyze some of these games to a deeper perspective. But the Dan Orlovskis, the Mina Kimes, everyone who goes back and watch these games, they've said these last couple of weeks, granted, I can't remember the opponent they played last week, but I know on Sunday they played the Jets. Who did they play the week before? I can't quite remember. Not a great team they played last week or the week before. But they said these last 2 weeks have been some of the best football that Trevor Lawrence has played. That is a testament to Liam Cohen. Like, Liam Cohen is a good coach. We got to remember, that guy down there in Tampa Bay had a resurgence in his career. Everybody thought he was left for dead. I'm talking about Baker Mayfield. Liam Cohen was a part of that. You see how Baker has struggled over the last couple weeks? You don't have that guy Liam Cohen there. You don't have Dave Canales there anymore. People got to really understand that the marriage between the quarterback and the offensive-minded coach, either if he's the head coach or the offensive coordinator, is huge. It makes or breaks quarterbacks. Why do you think a lot of people, and I myself, are questioning the future success of Patrick Mahomes whenever Andy Reid leaves? Like, it's questionable. Why do you think Dak and even Matthew Stafford, they've been in the MVP conversation this year? Look at who their coaches are. Brian Schottenheimer, offensive guy. Sean McVay, offensive guy. So when it comes to Trevor Lawrence, like he was in a coaching carousel in his first couple years in the NFL. So we were really waiting, and we thought Peterson, is it Dan Peterson? I can't remember his name. Anyways, we thought Peterson was going to be that coach, and heck, he took him to the playoffs. But the marriage really didn't work, and he kind of didn't really unlock Trevor Lawrence's like true potential in the NFL. And so when you look at the Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence is playing well. Their defense is absolutely elite. They're first in rushing defense, and they're 11th in scoring defense. So they have a arguable top 10 defense in the NFL. And I thought about this, and I questioned a little bit. Like, do you know, even in this 5-game winning streak, they've been without their number 2 overall pick in this recent draft? They've been playing like this without Travis Hunter. Look, I like Travis Hunter. I think he's a good player. But I never was a full fan of the Jaguars really trading up for this caliber player. And I really thought that they could have went a different direction, but they might regret that Travis Hunter pick. Like, you're playing this well without your first overall draft pick. Like, high impact player in Travis Hunter. Like, when I looked across the recent players in the league, I was sitting there like, you know, they could have went O-lineman. They could have went wide receiver. Hey, they had to go get a wide receiver in the trade deadline, Jacoby Myers. They could have got Tedero McMillan. They could have got Mecca Mbuka. Like, all these wide receivers that are selling right now in the league, like, they could have got one of those alongside Trevor Lawrence. You could have got an O-lineman, Will Campbell, which he's hurt, but the memo guy from the Jets, they said he's played pretty well this year as well. Even our guy, Tyler Booker. Like, they could have went O-line. Like, they could have went so many different ways. But the Travis Hunter thing, really, he's a gadget player. Yes, that makes his value, like, tremendous. Really tremendous. But he needs to find a primary position. If not, he's going to be a hurt player for the rest of his career. I really do mean that. Why do you think in his first season, he's already got a knee injury? He's got a thin frame. He's a thin frame player. And a lot of people are advocating for him to pretty much go where the money lies. I'm not really part of that crew. I think Travis Hunter should really go where his talent lies. I think that's cornerback. I think he can be one of the elite corners in the league. People got to realize cornerbacks are really hard to find. Like, elite corners are really hard to find. If you go around the league, not many of them. Trayvon Diggs fell off the face of the earth after his first couple years. You have guys like Pat Surtain, Devin Witherspoon, Jalen Ramsey. He's old. Like, there's no elite corners across this league. People will die to have an elite corner, and that's what Travis Hunter is. You can find a wide receiver anywhere. Heck, Brian Thomas has turned out to be a great player, even though he's had his problems here or there, but he's a pretty good player. So you can easily find a wide receiver in the draft. They could have even got one this year with Ted McMillan. So that Travis Hunter pick, it might turn out to suck for them. Really it is, unless he gets super healthy. But moving on, just to the success of the Jaguars' point of view. If they can beat the Broncos, it'd be a statement win in a wide open AFC. I think they're on the road in Denver. For some reason, it feels like Denver continues to play big games at home. Like, you played the Packers at home just this past week, and then the Jaguars have to go on the road to Denver to play a big game. And this sucks too. I think maybe we're going to be at the park that day, so I might not be able to pay attention to this game. But really, if they go in there and play well, just play well. I don't even think they have to win. If you were able to put up points against that defense, and you'll just be able to compete against the number 1 seed in the AFC and probably arguably the best team in the AFC, like the Jaguars, they're legit. They came from a team who kind of felt like they weren't going to make much noise in the beginning of the season to a team that, yeah, they're the real deal. And can Liam Cohen truly unlock Trevor Lawrence's true potential? That is something, and I teased it earlier, but that is something that I really, really, really am interested to see, like, these next couple years. I would really love to see if Liam Cohen can unlock Trevor Lawrence. We're talking about a guy in Trevor Lawrence. He was one of the most winning players coming into the NFL. He won in high school, won in college at Clemson, won a national championship. And people thought this guy was going to be the next thing since sliced bread. Like Trevor Lawrence was going to be the next Peyton Manning. He has all the attributes. Throws a fantastic football. Big arm. Tall. No homo. He looks good. Like he looks like a prototypical quarterback. He's got the same love session I have about Justin Herbert. Like these two guys, love him. They just look like a quarterback. So can Liam Cohen actually unlock something in Trevor Lawrence that people thought would never happen? You guys got to remember, when they signed Trevor Lawrence to all that money, people were looking at them like, you idiots. Like, you signed Trevor Lawrence and gave him that money? Bingo, I was one of those people. But great stuff going on in Jacksonville. I'm happy for Jacksonville. I'm happy for Trevor. That team just looks good. And dang, I really just think if they're playing like this without their number 1 overall pick from this recent draft, unbelievable stuff. That defense, they got Jordan Lewis in the offseason. Travis Walker, he really weren't turning out to the player we thought he could be. He's playing pretty well this year. You got Josh Allen, phenomenal player. They just got guys. They really got great players down there in Jacksonville. And that happens when you got all those number 1 overall draft picks. So, let's move on here. Oh, I had the wrong paper pulled up. Next topic. Got 2 more left. And we're going to move on to the NFC West. I just teased this team earlier. This team's worrying me. They really are. I've had a love affair with this team over the last couple of years. Well, not last couple of years, but this season. I kind of lose track when I'm over here I have to do my graphics by myself, so I kind of get sidetracked when I had to do it and I lose my train of thought. But let's get back to the big picture. The Seattle Seahawks. I've talked about this team 2 times so far. And you had Sam Darnold. You have Jackson Smith and Jigba. Best wide receiver in the NFL this year by a landslide. You have a phenomenal defense across the board. Like, they have a top 3 defensive unit in the NFL. I kind of like them to a certain degree more than I do the Broncos, just from a back-end corner standpoint. I think the front 7 of the Broncos is better, but on the back end, I'm definitely a fan of Seattle's back end more or less than the Broncos. But they're a top defensive unit, and I was pretty much on the Seahawks train early on in the season. But I've been worried about what I've seen the last 5 weeks with the Seattle Seahawks. I went back, and ever since the Rams game, they haven't reached a level of efficiency that I've wanted for this roster and this team. Despite being 11-3, I just don't think they've reached that. They were in a dogfight on the road against the Tennessee Titans. A Tennessee Titans team who is getting Cam Ward in the conversation of the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. And then they almost lost just this past couple days ago to a grandpa in Phillip Rivers, who was 44 years old, and the growing consensus going into that game is like, dude, the Seahawks should have a field day in this game and play super well. Wasn't necessarily the case. They were in a dogfight with a 44-year-old quarterback on the verge of losing. And then last week, even though they ended up scoring 37 points against Atlanta, in the first half, they only scored 6 points. So since that Rams loss, the alarming bells are ringing in Seattle. Now, I trust the defense. I really do. I think even in these games, the defense has played phenomenal. If it wasn't for the defense in that game in Seattle, they'd have lost. But that offense has been super hit or miss. There's no reason why they should have been in a death match against the Tennessee Titans. There's no reason they should have only scored 6 points at halftime against Atlanta. And in just this past game on Sunday, there's no reason they needed to be in a dogfight with a 44-year-old Phillip Rivers, who hasn't picked up a football and played, or no, he's picked up a football, but who hasn't played a snap in the NFL in 5 years. And I can say this because I've been a fan of Seattle. Like, I've been on the Seattle Seahawks train. I love the team. It's a Sam Darnold success story. You know, he was in a conversation with him and Daniel Jones, like resurging his career. I had this team being a fringe Super Bowl contender, but they've struggled on the road the last couple of games. And that is something that Matt McDonald, the head coach, like, he's pretty much harped on early on in the season. Like, there was a conversation early on in the season, midway through the season, that the Seahawks are kind of like a better road team than they are at home. They've won more games on the road this season than they have at home. But man, since that game in Los Angeles, it's not been that case. They worry me on the road. They struggled in Tennessee, struggled in Atlanta. And they still, and in the next couple weeks, they got to go to, they need to play Carolina, which that should be a win, but they got to go to San Francisco. That game's going to really, really test me to see if this team is going to be playoff ready. But if this team ultimately crumbles, I really do believe this. If they crumble, I think it's going to be at the hands of Sam Darnold. I don't say that lightly. But the struggles associated with this offense has been because of the play of Sam Darnold. Now, granted, even in the game in Indianapolis, they haven't had a run game. And the one thing that Sam Darnold, I do think that he needs, and honestly, not even just Sam Darnold, any quarterback in the NFL, you need a complementary run game. Seattle has not had that the last couple weeks. And this is the thing that worries me with Seattle. It's going to be hard to win that division, so you're going to have to go on the road in the playoffs. And you don't want to get in a scenario with Sam Darnold where you're going to have to go on the road with Sam Darnold, possibly in the cold. Like, you might have to go to Green Bay. You might have to go to Chicago, Philadelphia. How are they going to play well on the road in those conditions with Sam Darnold? I trust Jackson Smith and Jigba. I trust the defense. I trust the defensive-minded head coach. But I don't trust Kubiak, the offensive coordinator, and Sam Darnold to get the job done in the playoffs. If they go out there, even Sunday, you know, and it might be a little asterisk. You know, the Rams are going to be without the Devontae Adams, but you're at home. Make a statement. That's a huge game because you're still in the race for the division. Heck, I think they're probably, one game back? So that game is huge. Then you're going to have a 1-1 tie with the Rams. And then you should possibly be able to go on a run. You should beat Carolina, and then you should be able to beat the Niners because you got to get them revenge because the Niners beat you in the first game of the season. I think they did, if I remember correctly. So the Seahawks really has to do some soul searching these next 3 weeks to possibly change my mind. But the way but I really feel like the way they've played offensively, they're scaring me just a little bit. People have said this about Sam Darnold. Everybody's been pretty much part of the type of conversation of the wait. We will see type ordeal. But man, starting to get worried about the Seahawks just a tad little bit. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. All right. Last topic for today's show. Jerry Jones, it is Tuesday. So obviously Jerry Jones does his weekly radio show at 105.3 The Fan. So Jerry Jones had some really, really interesting comments on 105.3 The Fan this morning. I'm about to get ready to pull them up. And from the sounds of them, it feels like the demise of Matt Eberflus is soon to come. But we cannot fully let Jerry Jones off the hook. So Jerry Jones, and I quote, had this to say on 105.3 The Fan. We let their quarterback have a big day on us. He's referring to J.J. McCarthy. We let their quarterback have a big day on us. That wasn't the plan. We could have used more pressure without question at different times. The result was that we let J.J. McCarthy make some pretty significant plays out there. Plus, he played pretty well. It seems like we're always saying that about those opposing quarterbacks. Some of them haven't played as well, but when they play us, they play better. I think that's telling. That, by the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, is a pretty beefy comment in regards of the potential future of the defensive coordinator in Matt Eberflus. That's pretty much saying like, yeah, like our defense is bad, and it resembles the defense coordinator because these quarterbacks have went in and played well. And I think I saved the quarterbacks. I think I saved the tweet regarding the quarterbacks who've played well. I thought I saved it, but I didn't. But I can think of it on the top of my head. You've had quarterbacks such as Russell Wilson, who, by the way, was benched in favor for their rookie quarterback in like week 6, week 7 of the NFL season. But he had a career day against that Dallas Cowboys defense in week 2. How about J.J. McCarthy? Over the last couple weeks, we've had many questions about J.J. McCarthy, about him being the answer for the Vikings at the quarterback position. But in one game against the Dallas Cowboys, looked like the second coming of Peyton Manning. Caleb Williams, he's another one. And there's another quarterback as well. I just cannot remember from the top of my head. Maybe Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts hasn't statistically thrown the ball well, but against that Dallas Cowboys defense, yeah, I think it was Jalen Hurts, the name they brought up. Against the Dallas Cowboys, yeah, you have it in a tune-up game. So that's pretty much the overarching comments when it pertains to what Jerry Jones said. Jerry Jones was also hinting around the fact about, I don't have the quote, but I remember it. He was pretty much, and I'm paraphrasing here, he was pertaining to and educating us in the idea that your defensive coordinator needs to adjust his scheme to the players. So he's pretty much saying the fact that Matt Eberflus is a zone guy, but the way the Dallas Cowboys and the way they are structured as a roster, they are not a coverage team. Like, they're really not. They are made to blitz and play man coverage. Like, they're not a zone type team. Specifically, your safeties, Donovan Wilson, he's a box safety type guy. Deron Blanche, Chavon Rebel, those are man-to-man corners. And you're out there playing a zone scheme with man-to-man type corners and a blitzing type defense. It's just not working. And that is the reason why the Dallas Cowboys are in the conversation of being being part of the 8 worst defenses in the history of the NFL. There was a stat that James Slater brought up roughly a couple of hours ago that the Dallas Cowboys are in the running for being one of the 8 teams in NFL history to give up 500 points in a season. The Dallas Cowboys are in that conversation and are still active. Given their schedule, I don't know if it can happen. Lord, if the Commanders are able to score 30-plus points against the Cowboys, my Lord. Same thing with the Chargers. The Chargers offensively have been terrible. So if the Chargers go out there and drop 30 points on the Cowboys, it's really telling. And there was another quote where Jerry Jones was pretty much hinting around the fact, like, I kind of thought this guy was safe. You know, he's talked about the continuity that he wants. You know, we've had 4 different coordinators in the last 4 years. And he was hinting around the fact, like, yeah, I want continuity going into next season. But he's kind of not saying that anymore. He's like, these next couple of games will pretty much tell if I'm going to keep Matt Eberflus or not. So those are all the comments that Jerry Jones had to make about Matt Eberflus. But as I stated earlier before I read all the quotes, Jerry Jones cannot be left off the hook. I went back and I thought about it. In the past couple of years, past 3 drafts, even the last 5 years, outside of DeMarion Overshawn, what defensive talent has Jerry Jones drafted outside of Michael Parsons? When you look at the defensive roster as of right now, there's nobody significant draft picks on your defense. And this is a part of the scouting department that Will McClay and them have been really bad at drafting, is defense. They obviously hit on Micah Parsons, but outside of Overshawn, Bland, those two guys, you've not done well drafting. You drafted Mozzie Smith. Like, I can go across the line. They've drafted a Fehoko guy, Mozzie Smith, Jay Toya this year, who can't even get on the field. You've drafted corners. You had the one guy, the Eric Scott kid at corner that they drafted. He's turned out to do nothing. The linebackers that they draft, like, nothing has worked when it pertains to them drafting defensive players. So Jerry Jones is a culprit for the reason why that this Dallas Cowboys defense isn't properly constructed well and is not a good football team from a defensive perspective. You look at the opposite side of the ball. Look at how well they've drafted. They drafted Ryan Flournoy, who is turning out to be a great player in the 6th round. You drafted CeeDee Lamb, offensive lineman, which for some reason they're super comfortable with drafting offensive linemen. I want to know who is part of their scouting department in drafting offensive linemen. You need to take those guys and let them draft everywhere else, because whoever you got drafting the defensive side of the ball, specifically the defensive line, they've not been able to hit on a couple of those picks. I think Donovan Ezra is going to turn out to be a great player. But, man, for some reason, they just cannot draft well. So, and when I thought about it, and I might be defending Matt Eberflus just a bit, just a little bit, but I thought about it, even watching last night. Nobody flashes on that screen defensively for the Dallas Cowboys. What's the one thing we harped on about Micah Parsons for years? He just hops off the screen multiple times a game. When you watch the Dallas Cowboys defense, without him, nobody flashes. Only Demarion Overshawn has. Pre-injury, even this year, he pops off your screen just a little bit. But outside of that, nobody does. Heck, and this is the reason why I thought about it. I watched the Dolphins last night. Like, they had a couple players who were flying around. Like Jordan Brooks, linebacker. Like, people's had him in the conversation as a top 3 linebacker in the league. And I'm like, never heard of this guy. Like, he was out there flying and making plays in the cold yesterday. Jack Jones, a cornerback, he's been everywhere. I think he was with the Patriots a couple years ago. He was on the Raiders last year, and now he's on the Dolphins. I think he might have been released. I think he was on the Raiders earlier this year, but got released 1 or 2. And he was just out there making plays. Like, and I was sitting there like, Dallas doesn't have that. Even a couple of edge rushers for the Dolphins making plays. Defensive lineman, defensive interior guy they got. The fifth guy, I don't know, whatever his name is, making plays. The Dallas just doesn't have that. And I'm not defending Matt Eberflus. I'm not. Look, Matt Eberflus is not a good coach. I listen to John Middlecoff multiple times a week. I think he's a great mind, great podcast. I kind of mimic my podcast over him a little bit, and my thought process on storytelling just a bit. And also that I'm lying. A lot of that had to do with Colin Cowherd as well. But John Middlecoff knows the game of football. He knows the NFL in and out. Like, John Middlecoff has made the statement, like, Matt Eberflus is a terrible coach. Like, he said Matt Eberflus wouldn't even be in consideration, even close to consideration, for being his defensive coordinator for any team. And I kind of agree with them. Like, dude, linebackers is your bread and butter. You made Shaquille Leonard an all-pro, and I said this yesterday, I'm going to say it again. Shaquille Leonard was an all-pro. You turned Sean Lee into a great player. Linebackers is supposed to be your specialty. Like, that's been the worst position for the Cowboys this year. Outside of corners and safeties, like, that position has been brutal for Dallas. Like, they've had putrid, pretty bad linebacker play. So I really do think that these draft picks coming up are super important. Like, these, and I didn't say it yesterday. I don't want to say it because Micah got injured. But in the favor of the Cowboys, that draft pick that they got from the Packers might come up. It's actually the 23rd pick right now. Who knows the way things might turn out in the next couple of weeks. I think the Packers are about to lose this coming up week against the Bears. They're about to face the Bears at home. The Bears are going to be ready to get their get back. So I think that's a loss. That draft pick's going to get a little bit higher. Dallas, they're fixing to play the Chargers. I think they might lose that game. So Dallas right now has the 14th and the 23rd draft pick. here are some names that I would love to have for the Dallas Cowboys. And we're going to discuss some more Cowboys draft picks for the foreseeable future. But here are a couple of names that I really thought about. Sonny Styles. Everybody's talking about this guy. Ruben Bain, David Bailey, Caleb Downs. Like, if they can get Sonny Styles with the 23rd pick, which is really going to be hard to get him there. But if they can get this guy and Caleb Downs. Like, the thing about Dallas is, with your 2 first-round draft picks, you're going to have to get guys that are there. So, in order for them to trade up and get a guy that they really want, like a Caleb Downs, I think Caleb Downs is like a top 5 prospect. Like, there's no reason why Caleb Downs should get outside of the top 5. So, if they want to get a high-key player in this draft, they're going to have to get rid of that first-round pick that they have. But I think the ultimate formula for the Dallas Cowboys this year, is you got to draft 2 key impact defensive players. Like, you really do. And you got to accumulate picks somehow because they don't have another draft pick to the 4th round. I think making some trades, trading some players away right now, that trade for Jonathan Mingo just looks terrible every single week. Like, he barely even played. I think he caught 1 ball this year. The 1 ball that he caught in garbage time last week on Sunday. I think that's the only ball he's caught all year. That trade just continues to look stupid. But you just got to get some draft picks. So it pretty much sounds like Matt Eberflus and his future is in question in Dallas. And even though Jerry Jones even though I agree with Jerry Jones that Matt Eberflus's time should be up for Dallas, let's not deviate away from the fact, and we cannot let Jerry Jones on the hook. He has been a culprit for the reason why the Cowboys defense has struggled these last couple years. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, got him in right at just 1 hour and 2 minutes. We got 6 topics in, and we have reached the end of today's show on Tuesday, December 16th, 2025. And I will not be with you guys again to film a show, probably roughly till next Tuesday. So from 7 days from today, we'll be shooting episode 82 of the Jayden Bryce Show. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be gone on vacation from Monday, and we're coming back home we're going to be leaving tomorrow on Wednesday, and we're coming back home next Monday. So December 23rd will be my next show, 2 days before Christmas. So I'm going to be giving my comments on the action coming up on week 16 and everything revolving that. I'm fixing to repost all my stuff for you guys. Might try to get some Instagram reels here over the next couple hours. I love you all so much. Thank you for tuning in. Please refer my podcast to a friend or family member. Share it. Like my podcast. Check it out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I hope you all have safe travels to your preferred destinations if you're going on vacation. I know by the time I get back, a lot of you will be traveling to go see family for the Christmas holiday. So have a fun, safe week. I will see you all next week. I'm about to enjoy me some vacation with my friends and my family. I love you all.